Welcome to Eternal Enigma. Today we're examining something that goes beyond forbidden knowledge. We're talking about books that don't just challenge your beliefs, they challenge your sanity. These aren't fantasy novels or horror stories. These are real grimoires, ancient manuscripts, and occult texts that have left a trail of madness, death, and unexplained phenomena in their wake. Books that were locked away, burned, or hidden because those who read them too deeply never came back the same. So ask yourself, is their knowledge so dangerous that the human mind simply cannot contain it? Let's find out. Throughout history, certain books have been more than just controversial. They've been considered genuinely hazardous to mental health. Not because of their ideas alone, but because of what happened to people who studied them obsessively. We're talking about documented cases, scholars who descended into paranoia, magicians who reported entity attachments, collectors who experienced catastrophic life collapses, and readers who simply vanished or took their own lives under mysterious circumstances. The common thread? These books don't just contain information. According to those who've worked with them, they contain active forces, egregores, spiritual entities, or consciousness traps embedded in the text itself. Reading them isn't passive consumption, it's an invocation, whether you intend it or not. Now, we need to be clear, we're approaching this from a historical and esoteric perspective. Whether these books truly possess supernatural danger or simply attract unstable individuals is something you'll have to decide. What's undeniable is the pattern, a consistent trail of psychological deterioration following deep engagement with these texts. We'll be examining 5 books, escalating in danger as we go. Some you may have heard of, others have been deliberately obscured from public knowledge. All of them share one characteristic. They were written to change the reader, not just inform them. And sometimes that change is irreversible. Let's begin with a text that has haunted occult circles for centuries. The Necromancer's Handbook. Hidden in the Bavarian State Library sits a manuscript that most scholars refuse to study for more than brief periods. The Munich Manual of Demonic Magic, catalogued as Clam 849. Dating from the 15th century, this Latin grimoire is a systematic instruction manual for summoning, binding, and commanding demons. But here's what makes it different from other grimoires. It was written by a practicing necromancer for practicing necromancer. This isn't theoretical magic or philosophical allegory. It's a field manual, complete with troubleshooting guides for when rituals go wrong, warnings about specific entities, and techniques for protecting yourself from the forces you're invoking. The manuscript contains detailed instructions for necromantic experiments, communicating with the dead, animating corpses for divination, and extracting information from recently deceased spirits. It provides specific formulae, required materials, and exact timing for these operations. The level of detail suggests the author had direct, repeated experience with these practices. Now here's where things get dark. The few scholars who've studied the Munich Manual extensively report a consistent phenomenon: intrusive thoughts that don't feel like their own, suggestions whispered at the edge of consciousness, a persistent feeling of being watched, particularly at night. Some have reported seeing shadow figures in their peripheral vision that vanish when directly observed. Dr. Richard Kieckhefer, one of the few academics willing to work with the text, noted that even transcribing sections of it felt psychologically oppressive. Other researchers have abandoned their work with the manuscript, citing unexplained anxiety and disturbing dreams. But here's what really sets this book apart. It contains a section on creating servitors, artificial spirits constructed through ritual and fed with the magician's own life force. The instructions are precise, methodical, and according to some modern chaos magicians who've experimented with the techniques, functional. The problem is that these servitors, once created, develop a kind of semi-autonomous existence. They need to be fed regularly with attention and energy. If neglected, some practitioners report that the entities become hostile, turning on their creator. The Munich Manual warns about this, but in a way that suggests it's inevitable, that every necromancer eventually loses control of their creations. There's a particular ritual in the manuscript called the Experiment of the Dead Skull. It involves preparing a human skull with specific substances, consecrating it through elaborate ceremonies, and using it as a vessel for summoning a spirit who will answer questions about hidden treasures, future events, or secret knowledge. Multiple individuals throughout history who attempted this ritual reported the same progression: initial success, with the skull apparently responding to questions through temperature changes or movement, followed by escalating poltergeist activity in their homes, culminating in psychological breakdown. One 19th century occultist who attempted the ritual documented his experience in letters to colleagues, describing how the skull wouldn't stop talking even after the ritual ended, bombarding him with information he didn't want and couldn't verify. The Munich manual also contains something deeply unsettling: binding spells designed to trap demons in specific locations or objects permanently. The implication is that there are places and things in the world with entities sealed inside them, bound centuries ago by magicians using these exact techniques. And if you know the counter formulae also provided in the text, you can release them. Modern occultists who work with the Munich manual emphasize one consistent rule: never perform the rituals out of curiosity. The text itself warns that demonic forces respond to intent, and curiosity-driven experimentation creates unstable connections that the magician cannot properly control or terminate. The manuscript remains in the library, available to researchers with proper credentials. But those who work there will tell you quietly that it's one of the few texts that genuinely makes them uncomfortable to handle. Some refuse to be alone in the room with it. The Devil's Contract Template. If the Munich manual is a practitioner's field guide, the Grand Grimoire is a step-by-step manual for making a literal pact with infernal powers, also known as the Red Dragon. This 18th century French text claims to contain the exact procedure for summoning Lucifuge Rofocal, the Prime Minister of Hell, and negotiating a contract for wealth, power, or knowledge. What makes the Grand Grimoire particularly dangerous isn't just its content, it's the psychological framework it establishes. The book is structured as if demonic pact-making is a straightforward business transaction. There's no moral hand-wringing, no warnings about eternal damnation. It's presented as occult technology. Follow these steps, get these results. The ritual described in the book is elaborate and specific. It requires a 2-month preparation period, gathering rare materials like stones from specific locations, virgin parchment, particular incenses, and a knife that's never been used. The summoning itself must occur at the crossroads on a Monday night at specific times dictated by planetary hours. But here's what historians have discovered. There are documented cases of individuals throughout the 18th and 19th centuries who followed the ritual and subsequently experienced complete life collapse, financial ruin, family deaths, and mental deterioration occurring within months of the attempted summoning. One particularly well-documented case involves a French nobleman in 1750 who left behind a detailed diary. He performed the ritual precisely as described, reported apparent success, claiming the demon appeared and agreed to his terms, and within 6 months had lost his estate to fire, watched 3 family members die under mysterious circumstances, and was found dead himself, having apparently taken his own life. His final diary entry simply read, "The price was not what we agreed." Modern psychological analysis suggests the Grand Grimoire might function as a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. By performing an elaborate ritual with the genuine belief that you're contracting with demonic forces, you create a powerful expectation in your subconscious. When things go wrong, as they inevitably do in anyone's life, the pattern-seeking mind interprets these events as supernatural punishment, triggering anxiety, paranoia, and self-destructive behavior. But some occultists argue there's more to it than psychology. They point out that the Grand Grimoire's ritual is designed to create an opening, a vulnerability in the practitioner's psychic defenses. Whether you believe in literal demons or not, the ritual creates a suggestion that malevolent forces now have access to you, and that belief, that constant low-level fear, can attract negative experiences through a combination of subconscious self-sabotage and possibly genuine spiritual vulnerability. There's a section in the Grand Grimoire that most people don't know about, the termination clause. It provides a counter-ritual for breaking the pact if you realize you've made a mistake. But here's the catch. The termination ritual is significantly more complex than the initial summoning, requires materials that are nearly impossible to obtain in the modern world, and must be performed with perfect faith and intention. Few who've attempted the original ritual are in any state of mind to achieve that by the time they seek the exit clause. The book also contains what it calls the True Clavicle of Solomon, a separate section with planetary magic and angel summoning designed to counterbalance the demonic work. Some scholars believe this was added as a safety valve, a way for practitioners to seek help from celestial forces if the infernal pact went sideways. Others think it's a trap within a trap designed to entangle the magician in conflicting spiritual alliances. What's particularly disturbing is the number of copies of the Grand Grimoire that have survived despite repeated attempts to destroy them. Libraries have reported copies reappearing on shelves after being deaccessioned. Private collectors have described being unable to dispose of their copies, burning fails. Throwing them away results in their mysterious return. Even giving them away seems temporary as they find their way back. One modern occultist who experimented with the text described it as having a sticky quality. Once you engage with it seriously, it becomes difficult to mentally disengage. The imagery, the formulae, the symbols start appearing in dreams. You find yourself thinking about the rituals at odd moments. It's as if the book itself is a kind of entity that wants to be used. The Grand Grimoire remains in circulation, with multiple translations available. But those in occult communities maintain a consistent warning. This is not a book for beginners, not a text for the curious, and absolutely not something to experiment with for fun. If the psychological interpretation is correct, it's a manual for self-destruction. If the spiritual interpretation is correct, it's something far worse. The 6-month madness ritual. The Book of ABRAMELIN, written in the 15th century by a German Jewish mage named Abraham of Worms, is unique among dangerous grimoires because it's not about summoning demons, at least not initially. It's about achieving knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, a state of divine communion that supposedly grants the magician ultimate spiritual authority. Sounds benign, even noble. So why is it on this list? Because the ritual to achieve this communion takes 6 months of complete isolation, intensive prayer, and progressive sensory deprivation. And during those 6 months, the magician experiences what the text calls the ordeal of the abyss, a systematic psychological breakdown designed to destroy the ego and rebuild it in alignment with divine will. The most famous practitioner of the ABRAMELIN operation was Aleister Crowley, who attempted it in 1900 at Boleskine House in Scotland. He never completed it. According to his own accounts, the ritual began manifesting physical phenomena, furniture moving, apparitions appearing, and a general sense of hostile presence throughout the house. Crowley abandoned the operation and left the forces he'd invoked unbanished. The consequences: Boleskine House became notorious. Subsequent owners reported constant paranormal activity, psychological disturbances, and bad luck. One owner died by suicide. Another was killed in a car accident. The house itself partially burned down in 2015 and again in 2019, as if something wanted it destroyed. But Crowley's failed attempt reveals the core danger of the ABRAMELIN operation. It's designed to strip away your psychological defenses, leaving you vulnerable to whatever forces, internal or external, exist in the hidden dimensions of consciousness. If you succeed, you supposedly achieve enlightenment. If you fail, you risk permanent psychological damage. The ritual requires the practitioner to gradually reduce contact with the outside world, maintain strict moral purity, and perform increasingly intensive prayers and meditations. By month 3, practitioners report entering altered states where the boundaries between imagination and perception blur. By month 5, full-scale visions and auditory phenomena become routine. The problem is determining whether these experiences are genuine spiritual contact or psychotic breaks induced by isolation and sensory deprivation. The symptoms are virtually identical: hearing voices, seeing entities, feeling presences, experiencing synchronicities that seem impossibly meaningful. Modern psychologists would likely diagnose someone undergoing the ABRAMELIN operation as experiencing a dissociative episode or schizophrenic break. The practitioner would insist they're making contact with higher dimensions of reality. The truth might be that both interpretations are correct, that extreme isolation and mental discipline can create openings to experiences we have no proper framework to understand. But here's where it gets truly dangerous: the second phase of the ABRAMELIN operation. Once you've achieved contact with your holy guardian angel, you're supposed to use that connection to summon and bind an army of demons to your will. The text provides elaborate magical squares, grids of letters that supposedly contain the true names of spirits, which grant absolute control over these entities. The theory is that with your guardian angel's protection, you can safely command infernal forces. But what if your contact with the angel was incomplete? What if the 6-month isolation damaged your perception, and what you think is your guardian angel is actually something else? Several modern occultists who've attempted abbreviated versions of the ABRAMELIN operation report lasting psychological changes. Some describe it as beneficial: increased intuition, synchronistic experiences, spiritual clarity. Others report persistent paranoia, difficulty maintaining relationships, and a sense of being unstuck from normal reality. There's a particular phenomenon reported by ABRAMELIN practitioners: the appearance of what they call clipisphotic shells, negative spiritual residues that attach to the magician during the operation. These manifest as intrusive thoughts, compulsive behaviors, or even apparent external entities that follow the practitioner around. The text provides purification rituals to remove these attachments, but some practitioners report that once acquired, they're nearly impossible to fully eliminate. The Book of ABRAMELIN also contains a troubling section on using bound demons for practical purposes: finding treasure, causing love or hate, becoming invisible, flying through the air, or even causing death at a distance. If taken literally, this is a manual for supernatural crime. If taken psychologically, it's a framework for manipulating reality through focused will and belief, which can be equally dangerous when divorced from ethical constraints. The most disturbing aspect of the ABRAMELIN work might be this: it's designed to fundamentally alter your perception of reality. Once you've completed the operation, or even seriously attempted it, you can never fully return to consensus reality. You've seen too much, experienced too much, changed too much. Whether what you experienced was real becomes irrelevant. Your relationship with reality has been permanently modified. The Reality Manipulation Manual. The PICATRIX, originally titled Gayat al-Hakim, The Goal of the Wise, is an 11th century Arabic grimoire that stands apart from other occult texts in a crucial way. It's not about summoning entities or making pacts. It's about manipulating the fundamental structure of reality through astrological magic and talismanic construction. This makes it, in some ways, more dangerous than any demon summoning manual, because if its techniques work, even partially, you're not dealing with external forces you might potentially banish or escape. You're altering the fabric of causality itself. The PICATRIX operates on a sophisticated cosmological model where planetary forces continuously radiate influences that shape material reality. By creating talismans at precisely calculated astrological moments and charging them with appropriate rituals, the magician can redirect these cosmic currents to produce specific effects, attracting love, destroying enemies, gaining wealth, causing illness, or even altering someone's personality at a distance. Spanish King Alfonso X commissioned the first Latin translation in the 13th century, reportedly seeking the power to control his political rivals through occult means. His reign descended into civil war and chaos. Whether the PICATRIX contributed to this is debatable, but Alfonso became obsessed with astrological magic, neglecting governance in favor of constructing elaborate talismans. Renaissance magicians who worked with the PICATRIX reported similar obsessions. The text creates a worldview where everything is connected through invisible celestial currents, where free will might be an illusion, where human destiny is written in planetary movements. This perspective can be psychologically devastating, leading to fatalism, paranoia, or megalomaniacal belief in one's ability to control reality. But here's what makes the PICATRIX genuinely terrifying. Some of its techniques apparently work. Not all of them, not reliably, but enough to create a feedback loop. A practitioner creates a talisman for a specific purpose, and something approximating that result occurs. Was it the magic? Coincidence? Psychological priming? It doesn't matter. The practitioner now believes the system works and goes deeper. The text contains rituals that modern readers find deeply disturbing, sacrificing animals at specific astrological moments to charge talismans, using human remains in magical operations, and invoking planetary demons through elaborate ceremonies. These aren't metaphorical. The PICATRIX provides exact instructions, suggesting its author or authors engaged in these practices. One section describes creating a talisman to destroy a city, a working that involves astronomical calculations, specific materials, and rituals performed over several weeks. Whether this could actually destroy a city is doubtful, but the mindset required to seriously attempt such a working is itself dangerous. You're essentially performing a sustained meditation on mass destruction, psychologically rehearsing catastrophe. Modern occultists who work with PICATRIX techniques report a peculiar phenomenon. Reality becomes thinner, more responsive to will and imagination. Synchronicities multiply, thought seems to manifest more quickly, but this heightened sensitivity cuts both ways. Negative thoughts also manifest more readily, creating a feedback spiral where fear of bad outcomes helps create those outcomes. The PICATRIX also teaches a technique called celestial drawing, the practice of pulling planetary influences into talismans, locations, or even people. Essentially, you're making permanent changes to the energetic signature of objects or individuals. Some practitioners report being unable to reverse workings they've performed, living with the consequences of magical experiments that succeeded in ways they didn't anticipate or desire. There's a section on creating perfect talismans that supposedly grant extraordinary abilities, invisibility, flight, prophecy, or command over spirits. The requirements are staggeringly complex, requiring rare materials, perfect astrological timing, some alignments occur only once every several decades, and flawless ritual execution. Few have attempted these workings, but those who have report experiences that defy easy explanation, time distortions, encounters with non-physical entities, or periods of missing time they cannot account for. The psychological danger of the PICATRIX lies in its totality. It presents a complete magical worldview that, if fully accepted, replaces consensus reality with something far stranger and more mutable. Practitioners risk losing their grounding in shared human experience, becoming isolated in a private universe where symbols and stars dictate events, where human agency dissolves into cosmic determinism. The book that might not exist. We've reached number 1, and here's where things get genuinely bizarre. Because the most dangerous occult book might be one that was invented by a horror writer, and yet somehow impossibly seems to exist anyway. H.P. Lovecraft created the Necronomicon as a fictional grimoire for his horror stories, describing it as written by the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred, containing knowledge of cosmic entities so alien and terrible that reading it causes insanity. It's fiction. Lovecraft made it up. He said so explicitly in letters to friends. And yet, throughout the 20th century, multiple versions of the Necronomicon appeared, claiming to be translations of authentic ancient texts. The most famous is the Simon Necronomicon, published in 1977, which presents itself as a legitimate Sumerian magical text discovered in Manhattan. It's almost certainly a hoax, but elaborate, sophisticated hoax that draws from genuine ancient sources. Here's where it gets strange. People who perform the rituals in these fake Necronomicons report results. Not subtle, maybe it's coincidence results. Dramatic, reality-bending, psychologically damaging results. The Simon Necronomicon contains a walking ritual, a series of initiations through different dimensional gates, each guarded by a Sumerian deity. Practitioners report vivid visionary experiences, entity contact, and lasting psychological changes. Some describe it as profoundly spiritual. Others call it the worst mistake of their lives. The book operates on Sumerian and Babylonian mythology, invoking ancient Mesopotamian deities, Marduk, Tiamat, Ereshkigal, and others. But the rituals are structured in a way that seems designed to trigger altered states, repetitive chanting, symbolic imagery, meditative visualization, all building toward intense psychological experiences. One theory is that the Simon Necronomicon functions as an accidental reality hack. By creating rituals based on legitimate ancient symbols and practices, wrapped in Lovecraftian cosmic horror mythology, it creates a framework where the practitioner's subconscious can produce genuinely transformative and potentially traumatic experiences. Another theory, popular in some occult circles, is that Lovecraft didn't invent the Necronomicon, he channeled it. That his fiction was actually unconscious mediumship, describing real cosmic entities and forbidden knowledge that exists somewhere in the collective unconscious or higher dimensions. The fictional grimoire became a blueprint that others later filled in with actual magical content. This might sound absurd, but consider, Lovecraft suffered from intense nightmares, had visions of alien landscapes, and created a mythology that hundreds of later practitioners found to be spiritually resonant. His Cthulhu mythos has inspired actual religious movements, the Esoteric Order of Dagon, various Cthulhu cults, where people genuinely worship the entities he invented, or did he invent them? Modern chaos magicians argue that belief creates reality, that if enough people believe in the Necronomicon and the entities it describes, those entities gain a form of existence, thought forms, egregores or tulpas fed by collective belief until they achieve autonomy. By this logic, the Necronomicon is dangerous precisely because it doesn't exist in the traditional sense. It's a living text, constantly being rewritten, reimagined, and recreated by each generation of readers and practitioners. It has no fixed form, no authoritative version, no way to definitively say this is wrong or this is right. It exists in a state of quantum uncertainty, simultaneously real and unreal. Those who work with Necronomicon-based magic report consistent phenomena: dreams of alien cities with non-Euclidean geometry, encounters with tentacled or formless entities, a sense of contact with intelligences that feel genuinely other, not human, not demonic in the traditional sense, but alien and indifferent to human concerns. The most disturbing reports come from people who claim that after working with Necronomicon rituals, they experience reality glitches, synchronicities that feel too meaningful, déjà vu episodes that suggest branching timelines, or moments where the world seems subtly wrong in ways they can't articulate. Some practitioners report developing what they call Cthulhu consciousness, a perspective that views human existence as cosmically insignificant, a brief flicker in an uncaring universe dominated by forces beyond comprehension. This philosophical shift can be liberating for some, devastating for others. The danger of the Necronomicon, all versions of it, is that it's a feedback loop, fiction that inspired real magic that reinforces the fiction that deepens the magic. It's a bootstrap paradox, a closed causal loop where the book simultaneously doesn't exist and is more real than most grimoires with documented historical provenance. And perhaps that's the ultimate occult danger, the realization that reality is more fluid than we believe, that consciousness and belief can shape what's possible, that the line between imagination and manifestation is far thinner than consensus reality admits. The Necronomicon teaches, inadvertently or deliberately, that reality is negotiable, and once you truly believe that, there's no going back to seeing the world as solid, fixed, and safely predictable. The knowledge that changes you. 5 books, 5 different approaches to dangerous knowledge, but one common thread: they're all designed to change the reader, not just inform them. The Munich Manual teaches you to see spirits and communicate with the dead. The Grand Grimoire convinces you that demonic pacts are real business transactions. The Book of ABRAMELIN systematically dismantles your personality and rebuilds it. The PICATRIX reveals reality as infinitely manipulable. And the Necronomicon suggests that existence itself might be stranger and more terrible than human minds can safely process. Whether the danger is supernatural or psychological, whether these books contain genuine occult power or simply trigger latent mental vulnerabilities, the result is the same. Readers are transformed, often in ways they didn't anticipate and can't reverse. The ultimate question isn't whether these books are real or fake. It's whether certain knowledge, once acquired, damages the structures of consciousness that allow us to function in consensus reality. Maybe some doors once opened cannot be closed. Maybe some knowledge genuinely is too dangerous for unprepared minds. Or maybe the real danger is simpler. These books show us that reality is not what we thought, that forces exist beyond our understanding or control, that human consciousness is fragile and easily altered. And that realization, more than any demon or ritual, is what drives people to madness. Handle these texts carefully, or better yet, leave them closed. Some mysteries exist not to be solved, but to remind us that there are boundaries wisdom does not cross. If you found this exploration into forbidden literature valuable, subscribe for more investigations into the knowledge that was hidden for good reason. Until next time, stay curious but cautious. Not all doors should be opened. And remember, you can always stop reading.